So, here's the kitchen scrap secret that made my plants honestly explode with growth in just 7 days. Last Tuesday I tossed a handful of coffee grounds and banana peels into my worm bin, just expecting the usual, slow decomposition process. But what happened next completely blew my mind and, honestly, changed how I think about kitchen waste forever. Within just 1 week, my supposedly average worm bin had transformed into what can only be described as a nutrient-producing powerhouse that left my neighbor's expensive fertilizers looking like child's play. The revelation wasn't just about faster composting. It was discovering that certain kitchen scraps, when combined in specific ways, actually create a feeding frenzy among worms that accelerates their natural soil-building magic by up to 300%. The results were so dramatic that my tomato plants grew 2 inches in 5 days, and my lettuce developed the deepest green color I'd ever seen. Why are your kitchen scraps worth their weight in gold? Well, every single day, the average household tosses away genuine treasure disguised as garbage. Those apple cores, vegetable peels, and coffee grounds heading to your trash bin contain concentrated nutrients that commercial fertilizer companies spend millions trying to replicate. The secret lies in understanding that worms don't just eat these scraps, they transform them through their digestive process into something extraordinary. When worms consume organic matter, their gut bacteria work overtime to break down complex nutrients into forms that plants can absorb immediately. Unlike store-bought fertilizers that often burn roots or wash away with the first rain, worm-processed nutrients create a slow-release system that feeds plants consistently for months. This process produces castings packed with growth hormones, beneficial microorganisms, and a perfect mineral balance that makes plants stronger, more disease-resistant, and incredibly productive. The financial impact is staggering. A single pound of high-quality worm castings sells for anywhere from $15 to $25 at garden centers. With the right kitchen scrap strategy, you can produce several pounds monthly from waste that would otherwise cost you disposal fees. So, setting up your nutrient factory starts with a simple idea. Creating an efficient worm bin means understanding that worms, well, they need both a comfortable home and the right food combinations to really work their soil-building magic. And honestly, the container itself doesn't have to be anything fancy. A plastic storage bin with a few drainage holes drilled in the bottom works just perfectly. Your bedding foundation, believe it or not, determines everything that follows. Shredded cardboard works beautifully because it provides carbon to balance those nitrogen-rich food scraps, and it also creates the air pockets that worms need to breathe. Newspaper torn into strips can do the same job, but just remember to avoid glossy paper or anything with chemical inks. And if you happen to have coconut fiber, it creates an ideal texture that worms absolutely love. The moisture level in your bedding should feel, well, like a wrung-out sponge, damp enough to support worm life, but never dripping wet. Too much moisture creates anaerobic conditions that smell terrible and can actually kill your worm colony. On the other hand, too little moisture stresses worms and slows their reproduction and feeding activity. So here's where most people go wrong and honestly miss the explosive growth potential that's hiding right in their kitchen waste. Not all scraps are created equal and, combining certain materials actually creates feeding conditions that supercharge worm activity beyond normal levels. Coffee grounds mixed with crushed eggshells create, well, the perfect texture and pH balance that worms really crave. The grounds provide nitrogen and help improve soil structure, while eggshells add essential calcium and prevent the bin from becoming too acidic. This combination alone can, believe it or not, double worm reproduction rates within a month. Fruit peels from bananas, apples, and melons break down quickly and provide those natural sugars that beneficial bacteria absolutely love. When these sugars ferment just a little, they create an environment that attracts more worms to the feeding areas and speeds up the entire decomposition process. The key here is chopping these materials into smaller pieces. The increased surface area lets worms consume them faster. Vegetable trimmings from carrots, cucumbers, and zucchini add essential minerals while maintaining proper moisture levels. These materials decompose at the perfect rate to keep worms fed without overwhelming them. Tea bags can be included, but always remove staples and check that the bag material is compostable. The difference between ordinary results and explosive worm bin productivity often comes down to one simple preparation step that most gardeners overlook completely. Freezing your kitchen scraps before adding them to the worm bin breaks down cell walls at the microscopic level, essentially pre-digesting the material. When frozen scraps thaw in your bin, they release juices and become incredibly soft, making them much easier for worms to consume. This process can reduce decomposition time by up to 50% and dramatically increases the nutrient density of the final castings. Simply collect scraps in a container in your freezer, then thaw them before adding to your bin. Chopping scraps into pieces no larger than ½ an inch also accelerates the process significantly. So, feeding strategies that maximize production, well, the timing and method of feeding really determine whether your worm bin becomes a nutrient goldmine or just another composting experiment. Most people make the mistake of adding too much food at once, which just overwhelms the worms and creates problems rather than solutions. The secret here is creating feeding zones within your bin. Just bury small amounts of prepared scraps in different corners, and always make sure to cover them completely with bedding. Creating liquid gold from your bin is honestly a game changer. While solid worm castings provide incredible soil improvement, the liquid fertilizer you can create from your bin delivers immediate results that will shock you with their effectiveness. Worm tea, made by steeping finished castings in water, contains concentrated nutrients and beneficial microorganisms in a form plants can absorb within just a few hours. The precise recipe for maximum potency is 1 cup of mature worm castings mixed into 1 gallon of clean water. You stir this mixture thoroughly and let it steep for 24 hours, giving it a stir now and then to keep those oxygen levels nice and high. The resulting liquid should have an earthy smell and a slightly brown color. This concentrated worm tea can be applied directly to the soil around plant roots, or diluted even further for foliar spraying. Plants actually absorb nutrients through their leaves even faster than through their roots, which makes foliar application incredibly effective, especially during those rapid growth spurts. The beneficial bacteria in worm tea also coat plant surfaces, giving them a kind of natural protection against many common diseases. Even with the best intentions, there are, several common errors that can transform your potential gold mine into a frustrating failure. Overfeeding ranks as the #1 problem. Adding too much food creates anaerobic decomposition that produces terrible odors and, honestly, can actually kill your worm population. Temperature extremes destroy worm productivity faster than almost any other factor. Worms thrive between 55 and 77 degrees Fahrenheit, so it's important to avoid placing bins in direct sunlight or, in areas that freeze. Indoor locations like basements, garages, or, even under kitchen sinks usually provide ideal conditions year-round. Certain materials should never enter your worm bin, regardless of how organic they seem. Meat, dairy products, and oils attract pests and create odors that make indoor bins honestly impossible to manage. Citrus peels, onions, and garlic contain compounds that irritate worm skin and can drive them away from feeding areas. Spicy foods have similar effects and should be composted through other methods. After 2 to 3 months of consistent feeding and care, the magic becomes visible as dark, crumbly castings begin dominating your bin. The finished product should smell like rich forest soil and, feel smooth between your fingers. This is your black gold, a fertilizer so potent that honestly, just a small amount transforms plant health dramatically. The easiest harvesting method involves pushing finished compost to one side of your bin and adding fresh bedding and food to the other side. Within about a week, most worms will migrate to the new food source, leaving behind castings that are, well, relatively worm-free and ready for you to use. This gentle approach really helps you avoid disturbing your worm colony, while still giving you access to their precious output. Your homemade vermicompost can be mixed right into garden soil, used as a potting medium for containers, or even applied as a top dressing around established plants. Unlike synthetic fertilizers, worm castings won't burn roots even when used generously, making them just perfect for sensitive seedlings and young transplants. The real shock came when I started tracking the actual results in my garden. Plants fertilized with my worm bin gold showed germination rates that were 40% faster, and they developed root systems that were twice the size of unfertilized controls. And produced harvests that honestly left me scrambling to find enough friends to share the abundance. My pepper plants, which are usually just modest producers, exploded with fruit that kept ripening well into the fall. Lettuce grew so quickly that I was able to harvest multiple crops from the same space throughout the season. Even my notoriously difficult tomatoes developed thick stems and produced fruit clusters that broke previous personal records. The financial savings became equally impressive. Eliminating purchased fertilizers saved over $200 in the first season alone, while the reduced household waste meant smaller garbage bills and fewer trips hauling bins to the curb. This simple system connecting kitchen waste directly to garden productivity creates a closed loop that gets more efficient and productive over time. Your worm population grows, casting production increases, and plant results become increasingly dramatic as soil biology improves season after season. The secret is no longer hidden. Your kitchen scraps represent tomorrow's garden abundance, waiting to be unlocked through the incredible power of vermicomposting. Start your own nutrient goldmine today, and prepare to be amazed by the transformation in both your waste stream and your harvest. Don't forget to subscribe to Crop Corner for more game-changing tips that turn ordinary gardening into extraordinary results. And share this revelation with fellow gardeners who deserve to discover their own kitchen scrap goldmine.